freshly trimmed, naturally have slightly more foot behind center of balance than they do to the front. They just seem to be that way themselves, so that's the way we set up what we're doing. Okay, so what actually happens if you just forget about all of that and you look at the line, the axis line through the bone column, and then you look here and it's straighter. So you're like, so how did all that happen? Because according to this here, I should have put a wedge pad on them and jacked them up, but there's really no change in the palmar angle. I actually lowered it just a little bit. What happens when you center this around center of balance? It takes the pressure off the load in the leg, and the pastern actually rises up and moves forward, bringing your foot farther back underneath your cannon bone. Does that make sense? So I have a little, I'm kind of a visual person. I'm not the greatest at reading and whatever, so I try to come up with visual aids. So this is something that I come up with to explain how a horse's foot works. So all we're talking about is the deep flexor on the rear and the extensor on the front. And we're not worried about all the other stuffs in there. We're just trying to demonstrate equal load on the front and the back. And this is your check ligament, which is a fail-safe for when your horse gets too much tension on his deep flexor. Instead of just tearing the muscle apart, and this actually comes tight and it stops damage from happening farther up the horse's leg. So this is set up with, here's the center, right where this black mark is, right on this notch. So right here, we're slightly forward from center of balance, which is the way we want a horse to be set when we first are done doing our horse, trimming our horse. So, and this is to imitate soft ground like we have here to ride in. So your horse, when he travels forward, lands heel first, starts to bear weight on his leg, and I'm just pushing downward on this thing. And so you see the foot actually sinks more at the front than the back because there's a greater surface area. So now the horse is moving forward, and he gets to about here, and there's enough pressure here, and the heel actually starts to lift off to the ground. So he's actually ready for breakover, take his next stride. But if you notice, this check ligament isn't tight. It's not supposed to come tight every stride. That's just a fail-safe for when the horse lands his jump, steps in a hole or something like that. It's not supposed to be every stride. It's not supposed to be coming tight. So here's a horse, approximately 6 weeks later. He's got a centimeter of growth, and that's about, how much average horse grows. And no matter who trims the horse, no matter how good we all are, the foot doesn't grow down, it grows forward. So our work looks good today. 6 weeks later, it don't look so good. 12 weeks later, it looks pretty awful. And if you get your horse done once a year, it looks terrible. So here's just after one regular trimming shoeing cycle. Our horse comes forward, he lands, he starts to load. See how our foot is pretty much just sinking straight into the ground. We get a little farther, heel starts to lift off. That's not really tight, it's close, but it's not quite tight. Horse breaks over, takes a nice long flat stride, off he goes. But here's a horse, he's got his foot run out in front of him quite a ways. Some research that they did in Europe shows that for every centimeter the foot is too far forward, adds 55 kilograms of extra torque on the deep flexor tendon. And so that kind of equates to like every 3/8 of an inch. I think it works out to about 125 pounds, I think it is. 150? Anyhow. And then the second one is more and more and more. And you just see how that multiplies and puts more pressure on here. And we haven't even talked about our little friend, the navicular bone that's stuck in there, taking all the crap. We'll get to that in a bit. So now this horse steps forward. He lands, starts to bear weight, but look what his foot does. sinks in the sand. Not a lot of pressure here, but it's really sinking there. So our horse goes forward, check ligaments tight. So he has one choice: bend his knee, which releases the pressure on the deep flexor tendon, pick his foot up so he can break over and take his next stride. Now here's a horse that's really run out. He comes forward and he lands. Look what his toe does. And if you think, that don't happen. If you ever see a horse with a long foot really run forward, you lay on your belly and you have someone trot him by on a soft surface, a hard surface. And when his foot lands and bears weight, you'll see the toe of his foot will actually come up off the ground. So you can just imagine what it's doing to all of this. And see now, see we're tight? Our horse has no choice. He has to bend his knee, pick his foot up, and make his next stride. So something else I want you to consider is, we'll just for argument's sake, we have a 1,000-pound horse. He comes forward, he lands, and at one point in his stride, all the weight is on that one foot. He's going forward, but by the time he starts breakover, see how far his body has passed over the leg? So he no longer has that 1,000 pounds pushing straight down on his leg, because by the time he gets here, there's so much of the weight has passed over the leg. But then we take this horse, he's really run out, and he goes like this, and he lands, and he gets to here. He's probably got 800 pounds of his weight on that leg while he is trying to break over. And so if any of you are in a speed event, so you're barrel racing or just racing or heading steers, whatever it might be, and you look at those horses, they come out and they're lots of knee action. You know what? Something else they have in common, they don't win anything, because their stride is like this. So that's this horse, because he's bending his knee and picking his foot up because he has to. But then when you trim that horse like this, and so he can break over and make a nice long low stride, he's now the horse in the barrel racing that looks boring, because it's like, well, geez, how, he just looks so slow, but he wins the rodeo. And that's because his stride is so long. And so if you're in a timed event, roping calves or steers or whatever it might be, they say it takes a horse 3/10 of a second to make a stride. So if the difference between winning the team roping is, if you're at the NFR, it's 3/8 and 4 or 5, you don't get a check. If you can cut 2 or 3 strides out of there, that's the difference between getting a paycheck and not getting one. So it's about keeping your horse sound, but it's also about movement. And we have taken horses at barrel racing finals in Moose Jaw, and actually Logan was shoeing there. I was busy working the ground, and we had a demonstration, and we told the barrel racers they could come and we'd put the COVID on and just check their feet out and stuff. And there would be horses come to Logan, he'd put the COVID on, and they were run forward, kind of like, they were way back here kind of thing. And these were horses that, say just for example, in the 1D, they catch a check once in a while, like a 4th place check or whatever, a little too fast maybe to be in the 2D. So Logan would shoe these horses for him, and they would run again as little as that one horse is 45 minutes later. And that horse went from just catching a check once in a while to won that go around, won the short go, and then went all summer long and just won everywhere that little girl went. And so we've proved it with electric eye that horses can actually run faster with their feet balanced this way than we used to believe a long toe made a long stride and stuff. It actually makes a short stride. And I have one other little thing I do to kind of demonstrate that. And horses travel relatively the same as we do. So you travel heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. And it doesn't have to be heel, toe, but it should be slightly heel first. Some horses will be sound with a flat landing. A horse that lands toe first is never sound. He might do fine, he might compete, and he might go that way all his life and get around or whatever, but if he could actually talk to you, he would tell you he isn't sound. So this is just to mimic what a heel sore horse does. that lands toe first. So I'm going to reach forward as far as I possibly can and land on my heel. So there's my stride. So now I got all kinds of problems back here because someone didn't shoe me right, and this hurts, and I got navicular, and who heck knows what else hurts. So my rider's kicking me, and I'm running as hard as I can, but at the last instant, I want to put my toe down because my heel hurts. So I'm going to land toe first to try and avoid that pain. So I'm going as hard as I can, trying as hard as I can, but I land at the very last minute. I just put my toe down. How much shorter my stride is? You know how many strides is in a barrel racing run or even a team roping run, or if you're trying to get a cow horse to run down a fence and get past a cow? So if you can multiply that by ever so many times, there's a difference between winning and losing. And a comfortable sound horse will obviously run and try harder, and that's where Janet and I will get into how a lot of this crosses over and fits together. So there's Mud. At any point, put your hand up if you got a question. Yes? Yeah. 55 kilograms. Oops, I was holding the button down here and everything went amok, sorry. You can't, it's really not a good idea to give an old cowboy electric stuff because things go bad. Angle? It does, very much. Angle is very important. We're going to touch on that a little bit as we kind of move forward. So, and I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to show you how you can use the cobit to let the horse tell you what is most comfortable for that horse. So we're taught, you know, that nice bone alignment, like you want to have that. That's got to be. I've seen horses very sound and comfortable that didn't have real good bone alignment. And then I've seen horses with really good bone alignment that weren't comfortable, or ones that didn't have bone alignment that were comfortable is what I was trying to say. So what happens in a horse as he goes through his life, he gets a little injury here, a little arthritis, maybe a little bit something to a ligament somewhere, and it no longer gets to where what we perceive as perfect alignment might not necessarily be most comfortable for that horse. Now maybe when he was 3 that would have been, but now that he's 14, he's got some troubles. Maybe he wants to be a little bit different. And we're going to show you how you can use the cobit to let the horse tell you the angle. So before we get to that, we'll just talk a little bit about the cobit. So from the perspective that you're looking at it, when you pick the horse's foot up, it will be like this here. You always put the screw to the outside when you pick the foot up. So these squares here are just windows to look through to see the frog. They're not for any kind of measuring or drawn lines or anything. The square ones, yeah. If you buy a cobit, all else fails, read the instructions. It does actually have that on the instructions. That might be actually a good idea, actually. Yeah, yeah. An interpreter just yeah, yeah. And a nagging wife might even be a little helpful at times when you're first using it. So we draw a line, we put it on the horse and we get it to balance. And we're going to show you with a horse later today actually how to do that. So anyhow, we found our balance point, we pick our foot up, so we can mark in the center of this slot, and that'll show us where the center of balance is in the horse's foot. So then your average size quarter horse that would wear like a Ott St. Croix shoe or Diamond or whatever brand you're using, you would put a line at the rear of this slot and then at the rear of this slot. And that gives this distance approximately a quarter of an inch greater distance than it is from here to there. And that's how horses seem to want to be. They seem to want to have a little more to the rear to the front than the front. And then also, like I said, 6 weeks later, you're still just in the middle instead of being way back here. So if you have a wee little horse who wears a double aught, you could put your line back here. You got a bigger horse that, you know, he wears a 1. You put your line kind of up in the middle. If he fills the cobit right up, then you would put your line right out to the front. So when the coffin bone gets bigger, it gets bigger to the tip of the coffin bone, but the wings of the coffin bone at the back also. Like it goes both ways. It doesn't just go that way. So if you move your line this way, you have to do the same here. And so there is a bit of a judgment call, you know, just how big or how small a foot is. But truthfully, if you got a foot that's run forward, you know, that far, and you get within, you know, 2 or 3 millimeters, like really, is 2 millimeters going to make a difference, you know, running down the arena and going over rocks and whatever? That 2 millimeters isn't going to make a lot of difference, but that 20 millimeters that you brought it back, or 10 or whatever, that is going to make a difference. And the important thing is to try and have slightly more to the rear than you do to the front. Oh, one more thing. So when you pick the horse's foot up, and I don't know if this thing would work. So you draw a line right through the center of the frog, right through the tip of the frog, and just straight out, just a nice straight line. And so when you put the cobit on the horse's foot and you're going to tighten up the line, you want to have, we'll pretend that this is my line. It's a little easier for you to see. The edge of the window, either this one or this one, as well as here, needs to be parallel to your line. Now, depending on the size of the foot, that line might be here, it might be way over here on a bigger foot, but you can't have it like this because the horse's joint doesn't flex that way. So if the horse's joint flexes this way and you've got that thing on like that, it's not going to rock. The cobit's not going to work. So it is very important that you have the cobit parallel with that line that you draw through the frog. And so through the research that we've done, like a lot of methods of shoeing and mapping and stuff, they use the apex of the frog or the point of the frog as a reference point. So the apex of the frog is very misleading. I've seen the apex slough over an inch away from where it should be, like from that balance point. So if you're using the apex of the frog to do any measuring from, you're going to be wrong probably at least 50% of the time. The foot flares, sorry, the point of the frog. Yeah, fancy word. Yeah, well, yeah. Point of the frog. The frog will slough forward or move forward and back. It doesn't seem to go left and right. It seems to stay centered. The hoof wall it'll go left and right all over the damn place. The hoof wall it'll go anywhere. So by lining the cobit up with that line through the frog, you're pretty close to the way the joint flexes. And even if you got a toed-in horse, his frog will be pointed that way. So when you put the cobit on, he'll still, whatever his conformation is.